Bron back again, and we're going to talk about, is money a superpower? So it's a good topic, Bron.
Okay, well, hello. Thank you very much for inviting me again. I guess this has come up for me recently because, like a lot of people, I think things have changed and I'm in a different situation to where I would like to be, and feeling all kind of, oh, what am I going to do about this? How am I going to get more money? What I need more money. If I only had more money, then I wouldn't be so worried. I'd have more time. I'd be all this stuff. And I was noticing how sped up I was feeling around the subject and how uncomfortable I feel around the subject, like don't want to talk about it sort of thing. And it got me thinking about kind of, well, what is going on, And I remembered an exercise. I think it was Michael Neal who I first heard it from. And, there was sort of like, if you think about money, it's like in the olden days, it was just an exchange, so it's a means of facilitating an exchange between two people. So you've got something, I want something, okay, let's swap a chicken or a goat or whatever, back in the day. And then I think they used salt, and then maybe they used whatever. But somewhere along the line, someone decided that, it was a mutually agreed thing that money was a good idea to use as a facilitation for this exchange. So that's what I was like, okay, fine. So pulled out some money and had a little look, and don't know if you've got any money. But I was like, okay, so what actually is this? And like, it's a piece of paper, it literally is a piece of paper with some money, with some pictures on it and some numbers. And this one in particular is an old piece of paper. I don't even know how long this piece of paper is going to be valid as an exchange, So how is it possible that I am getting all hit up and having sleepless nights about a piece of paper? Like it can't give me anything. And yet there's a lot of value, sort of that's placed on it in more ways than one. But then I was like, okay, well, I've got a fork here, right? So this fork is very useful for eating my food, and I can maybe poke some potatoes with it, or like a microwave meal. But that's probably the extent of usefulness of this fork. I could probably think of a few other things, but not a lot. But basically, it's all to do with food. So I was like, well, that's a tool, yeah, and that's got a purpose, and that's it. And like, what if this, like, it's a tool to facilitate an exchange? And yet we have this notion that like money can, having more money would make me happy, or I'd be able to have an experience that would, be able to travel the world or whatever. And yes, you'd be able to buy an experience, you'd be able to sort of put form. It's almost like this helps you to get some sort of form. So like buy a product, or buy a trip around the world, or buy a coaching experience or whatever, a conversation, but your experience of that comes from you and something so much deeper, which is what we talk about in Wisdom Entrepreneurs a lot, is this understanding of where our experience comes from. So this isn't even buying that experience. This is buying the opportunity to have an experience. But what we do with that is down to us. And it kind of made me think, okay, well, if that's, like, it can't buy me happiness, it can't buy me a sense of freedom, it can't buy me security. So my feeling that, so that is all coming from me, and that's what I was kind of exploring and looking at and wanting to sort of open up and see if anybody else has seen anything, or if that kind of makes you think of anything around that.
I love it. It's such a juicy topic, because I remember once somebody saying, it might have even still been Michael Neal, but somebody pointed out that, like, the way you showed that piece of paper then, and that piece of paper won't even be valid at some point. So that actual money won't buy anything at some point. It'd just be something that gets chucked away or burnt or whatever. But somebody said, if you needed to paint a room, you would buy enough paint to paint the room. You wouldn't buy enough paint to paint 10 rooms. But we have this relationship with money that we don't want enough to get what we need right now. We want to sort of bank it. We want to have enough to have all the things that we might ever need. And there was something in that I really saw that was, yeah, actually, when I'm less concerned about the amount, I have less thinking, less worry about it. Because I've recently had a whole 2 a.m. waking up in 2 a.m. in the morning going, oh my God, we're running out of money. What are we going to do? What am I going to do next? And what was interesting about that experience was I was so panicked and fretting about it. And what happened was, after fretting for a while and then just being awake, I then thought, oh, maybe this urgency is just helping me see I need to focus a little bit more on something, rather than it being something I have to act on, or, and I know that's not a good place to act from. But it just sort of had me hone it down. It's like, okay, there is a thing coming up where there's a it looks like we're going to fall off a cliff. What could I do about that right now? And then there was it got really creative, but still I get caught by that, oh no, what am I going to do? I need to make more money thing, even though I know I've got enough paint at the moment to paint whatever I need to paint. So I love it. I love that conversation.
And just as you were talking there, like I think so often I get tricked by my mind into thinking that it's my value that's represented, like people are buying me or something from me, and am I worthy of that person's money? Rather than seeing it as like, okay, well, I've got something that this person wants, needs, whatever. It's none of my business what they want to do with their money. If they want to spend it on me, that's great. Not on me. If they want to buy, exchange it for something that I'm offering, that's great. But that's all it is. It's not a reflection on me, which I kind of get quite tripped up with, especially trying to sell services to people, physio services, coaching services, whatever services. But that's very ego based, that's not what it's about. And I think when I can see that, it's much more helpful.
Yeah, I love that, Bron. I think the biggest thing for me was trying to buy happiness the whole time, not realizing the more money I had, the more I got unhappy, because it was never enough. Always wanted more and more and more and more. And I've always been classed as, trying to buy people's love as well, because I showered them with gifts and stuff like that. So, but now, not having the money, I see that I don't need to shower people with gifts to get that love in return and stuff. So, yeah, quite powerful.
I can share my experience, which is I defaulted on my mortgage a few years ago and it was a bit of a financial mess. And not having money actually made me more creative. So I went online to find out how I could earn money quickly. And Airbnb came up as an option, which I'd never heard of before that point. And I ended up renting my spare room out as an Airbnb for, up until the beginning of the coronavirus, so probably for about 3 years up till then. And after that time, I ended up getting redundancy from my work, which put me in a position where I didn't really need the Airbnb anymore anyway. So
Yeah, same. I went through a situation where I was struggling financially, and in really, really struggling financially. In the thing that I lost my house and I lost my car and everything, and that's the same that happened to me, Anne Marie. Is that while I was fretting about it, I had this notion that if I wasn't living the lifestyle I was living, I would be in the gutter, so it looked to me that I'd built up this castle. We've talked about this, so about this. So we've built, I built this castle around me and thought I was safe, and then it wasn't safe anymore. And it looked like the only other option would be to live in a terrible place and be in fear. And then I realized one day, why is that the only option? Or, there were other options. And I got really creative and started thinking about all these things that I could do instead. And yeah, just the world seemed to open a lot more when I wasn't pinning everything on the material things around me. That I was basically waking up and thinking, oh, today I have to, like before I get out of bed, I would think I've got to make $2,000 before I get out of bed just to pay the mortgage. And that pressure that I put myself on just closed all the options constantly, until I had that insight. I was like, oh, I don't need all of this. I can just have a different life now. And then it was a relief to give it all back and get the bailiffs to come collect the car and give the keys back to the house. And it was a relief because I didn't have to find that £2,000 every morning. I could just go and rent somewhere and get a job and, cut back and so on. And I had a lot of insecurities about that. Oh, I'm this age and I've got these many degrees and here I am working in an estate agent. I did have some thinking and insecurities, but I was way freer because I could just do what I needed to do and not have all of that. And then out of that freedom came creativity and came other ideas and, came this business and so on.
I had this insight about money a few weeks ago because I got in a real state about it and feeling like it's represents survival and all this, typical stuff. And so I was there was a personal thing going on, but also this sudden feeling of oh God, what if money's going to collapse in the recent future and coming future and all this stuff. And my mind was going, how will we keep warm? How will we whatever? How will we this? And I suddenly had this, it seems so obvious, but to me it just, at the time it was God, money doesn't create any of those things. It's all those resources are there. Everything's being produced, everything's being done. Everything is happening. It's just this paper exchanges between us. And if everyone carried on doing the same thing, but the paper vanished and we just didn't pass that between us, everything is still there and could just happen exactly as it is, just without this paper exchanging between us. Of course, then it goes into, well, would people be greedy, or this doesn't resolve the fact there's not enough for everyone. But it was just really interesting to think the paper doesn't actually create any of the things that we need. It's just somehow this odd thing that we pass around while everything else is going on. People are sowing seeds and people are setting up talks and people are giving physio treatments, and all that could still happen, and just the paper would disappear. And so it was just interesting in some way to realize that that paper doesn't create warmth or food or all the things that those things don't have to disappear just if that paper disappears somehow. Or anyway, I don't know if that speaks to anybody else, but it felt like really like, oh, it was just interesting to be connecting that paper with those things even existing.
I love that, Alfie. I think that's brilliant. Yeah, it's so true. And as you were speaking, I was like, yeah, and it's not what you were saying, but like it struck me sort of how like we just trust that it works as well, don't we? And like that's quite. I don't know if that's trusting sort of in the system that we've all co-created, or that's being co-created somewhere along the line. And I don't know. And like you say, we trust that we will exchange the money. So it's like, well, you could trust that things will just happen without exchanging the money, sort of thing. Not that we're going to do that, but I don't know. That was lovely.
The whole thing is built on trust. That's the only way it works. So you just have to look at the stock exchange and all the rest of it. That is completely built on confidence of the system being able to provide things at the right time at the right place. And when confidence is lost, the value drops until the confidence comes back again. It's all on confidence and trust. So it is interesting. We do tie ourselves in knots with money. And as you say, you only need enough to get yourself through whatever it is that you are currently experiencing. You don't go to the shops and, well, we saw it at the beginning of the first lockdown, people buying ridiculous quantities of stuff that they thought they needed to hoard, and it caused problems. But we don't live in a society where that's required. We just have this odd societal fix that having this stuff in reserve is a good thing to do. It's not a bad thing to do, but it's not a necessary thing to do. And that's the intriguing thing about it. And we can all get caught up on how much we're worth, whether we're earning enough or not. If we are selling a service, whether it's going to add value and how we quantify that. And personally, how I've got around that is by making it a conversation with the person I'm speaking to. And if we can come up with a mutually agreeable number, brilliant. And if we can't, that's okay. And that's all it is, isn't it? It's coming up with something that feels comfortable for both parties to make sense to carry on. So no one feels like they're either being done over or undervalued. And that's it. And you might get to the point that go, actually, I'm going to do this for free today. Or even I'll pay you to do it. They're all options. It doesn't matter. It all comes down to what people are comfortable with doing and where the value in that lies. And it purely comes in the feeling of that exchange. And the money is just a facilitation to make that work or not. And it's almost irrelevant. But it does, unfortunately, buy us the ability to get hold of other services that are beyond that kind of conversation to start off with, because that's fallen out of the sort of common way of doing things. But actually, there's quite a number of small businesses that you could go, right, I'd quite like this service, but I can't do it in this way. What can you do? And they'll get creative with the solution for how you might be able to buy their service, because they don't want to say, no, we don't want your business. They'd much prefer to have your business than not. So it's being creative in both senses, both in terms of how we earn, if that's the way we're going about it, but also how we might go about getting the goods and services that we're trying to get our hands on. We've all got that ability to ask. And if the answer is no, so be it. That's fine. Someone else might be able to provide me with what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because you reminded me of the bartering system, and that's what happened to me during that time. Once I got out of the embarrassment and, you know, shame that I was under, and everything of I've run out of money, actually I started bartering with everybody and people loved it. So, you know, I would do what I could do, which was coaching, and sometimes other things. That sounds rude, but, you know, like, you know, good, like legal things, and and they would do other things. So I coached a lady who is not in this room anymore, but who ended up creating this beautiful piece of art for me. And I coached someone who did some admin for me. So I ended up being really good at bartering. Like, I've got something that you want, and you've got something that I want. Can we come to a deal? And what was interesting about that is more people than you would think are keen on that idea, and they like that idea. So many people said, "Oh, I love the bartering system," and not exchanging physical cash, but exchanging goods or services or goodwill or whatever it was. And it's only because we're out of that habit. Well, that's what we always used to do. And if you go to other countries, people do barter all the time, don't they? And think that's completely normal. And I absolutely rubbish at bartering on a market stall. And then I've seen other people like Rob, and he'd never pay top price for any. I'd just pay whatever it is. And he would never pay top price. He has no qualms about saying, you know, bartering someone down and having the crack about it. So it is interesting. We're just conditioned out of it, and don't think of that as a way of exchanging what you need for what you've got. Really good point. And then down to the value of it. It's a really weird thing, Bron, because I've seen that for myself, and I still have that, I admit. But if I have to charge because the business needs it, or because other people that I'm paying need it, I have no qualms at all about saying it costs this much, or no, we're not going to do that. But if it's for me, it feels like, oh no, like I can't ask for that, or I should be, you know, it comes down to like somehow subconsciously seeing it as something to do with my worth, or something to do with somehow related to me in some way, when it clearly isn't.
I think that's a really interesting point. I've been sort of thinking about what to do, whether to set up a charity or a community interest company, and I was really torn in terms of what I'd feel more comfortable fundraising for, getting money for, and I can't figure out what it is that is making me feel that perhaps charity, it'll be easier for me to raise funds, because I'll feel in my heart that that's, you know, somehow that's better to raise money for. But it doesn't make any sense, because I know full well my little brother, he attaches no emotion to bartering whatsoever, and he would go out and he will always do it, but he doesn't have that sort of that emotion attached to it. It's just a transaction to him, and if someone walks away happy, then they're both happy, you know. So I've got to get to the bottom of my issue rather than the issue of the money. It's me who has the sort of block, but I can't figure out, you know, the path to that. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's really interesting, because I've only ever met one person in my entire life who's like that, and he owns a wood yard, and he came to us wanting a new computer. He said, "But I don't want to pay for it." I stood there all bewildered. I was like, "What do you want to do then?" And he ended up building us a new workshop in return for a new PC. But never ever had it happen ever again though. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Might try it a bit more.
Yeah. I think to answer your question, I don't know if Bron has other thoughts on this, but to answer your statement or question, Nikki, it seems to me it's just how much attachment we've got on it. It's as simple as that, you know, like there are these 7 spiritual laws of money and these other things that you can go and investigate, but when I've looked at it for myself, it just comes down to how much attachment I've got on it. And that simple thing of being able to know that I could, here's an example. So when I first started working in the prison, I went for the interview, and the service manager said, we'll do a 12-week pilot, and how much is it? And I wasn't expecting that question. And he, you know, after like an hour-long meeting, he said, yeah, okay, we could do a pilot, you know, how much is it? And I said 50 quid. And I lived 44 miles away from the prison. So it's an 88-mile round trip, you know, like 50 quid just about cover my fuel. And so I went away and I thought, oh no, why did I say that? What am I going to do? And I agonized over this proposal. And my husband came up with a great idea saying, you meant 50 quid an hour, you know, and it was a 3-hour session. So I ended up doing that. And I really agonized, really agonized for weeks. You know, it was almost coming to the point where I wasn't going to put the proposal in because I was so embarrassed about this whole 50 quid thing. And then I did. And as it goes, he then said, would you like to do a proposal for 12 months? Because, you know, they had some money in the local government and underspending the local government. And my thinking changed like that, because for 12 months, well, I have to earn a wage. Like, so I'm going to be doing this for 12 months. So it just seemed like completely normal that I would put at least a decent amount in for me to be able to earn a wage to do it. And I'm going to need these things and so on. So the attachment to what it meant is that I'm asking for 50 quid for myself to show up and do a workshop completely disappeared, because I just went straight to this logical, well, yeah, I'm going to need that. I'm going to need that. And one of course, they're going to expect that. And they didn't tell me what the underspend was. I didn't know how much I had, how much budget there was to play with, but I just worked it out. What does it cost? And I didn't charge myself out at a lot of money, but it do you know what I mean? It just sort of took that whole thing of it's about me off the table, because all of a sudden it wasn't really about me. It was about what they were getting, the service that they were getting, and what I could do in the most economical way that I could do it. And I really saw it's just the attachment that I have in the moment about what I'm charging them, which is what you're saying, like, oh, I can fundraise for a charity, but I can't charge for my services if I'm not a charity. And it is that attachment. Somehow it looks like it means something about you, even though it actually doesn't.
It's self-belief, isn't it? It's feeling that you're not worth it. I think that's the belief presumably I have somewhere with the CIC. It was made very easy for me though, because as I was buying dog food, I was literally mulling it over in my mind, looking out the window, buying this dog food. And as I clicked on it, I was saying community interest company, charity, community interest company, this little box popped up and it went, pick a charity. And there was a donation. And I was like, well, there we are. So, you know what I mean? I didn't even have to mull it over.
Mind works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, it was sent.
Brilliant. Did you have other thoughts on that, Bron?
Yeah, just sort of similar as well. And there was something in there about the validation piece as well, isn't it? I think when you're just trying something out, and like you said, you know, when it was just you doing a little program to see if they liked it and wanted more, when they said, oh yeah, you know, yes, we like what you've got, we want it, then it's like, okay, cool, there is value here. I don't know, it's funny. But I think, like you said, Nikki, it kind of goes to that self-worth and that self sort of like, but it's like, wouldn't it be fun to be able to play a game with it? You know, like, oh, let's just see if we can, you know, make some money or get something for a bartering thing or whatever. I hadn't even thought about like that. The embarrassment to ask someone. I would never ask anybody to pay less for anything, you know.